Добрый день, дорогие друзья, с вами Александр Герчик. У нас сегодня, на мой взгляд, самый интересный наш третий выпуск. Сегодня мы будем беседовать, на мой взгляд и на ваш взгляд, очень интересным человеком. Это Перри Кауфман. Этот человек, которого называют отец алгоритмического трейдинга в Америке. Поэтому, дорогие друзья, слушайте, получайте удовольствие, а самое главное, учитесь.
Part of the discussion we will have today is why these things work for the interest rates but don't work for the stock market. We're accepting more algorithmic trading, and that's what I do.
Добрый день.
Oh, thank you. I know. Good day. Yes. Where did you learn your Russian? It's very good.
My Russian is good. I love it. I mean, as you can see, we have a person with a great aura. That's a very important thing. Perry, first, very simple question. Your education background is math.
Yes.
Why?
Why? Because my mother's a mathematician, and parents push children. It was an era when I was going to college. It was an era where there was so much opportunity, and everybody wanted engineers. And I was also very fortunate that in my first year of college, they started a course in programming computers, which was 1965.
50 years ago, 53 years ago, 52.
Yes. So luckily we don't all age, but
in Russia we didn't even know what is a computer.
It was fascinating to be part of that era, and we were just talking before that. From there, I had an opportunity when I was doing graduate work to work for a government project at the university, which allowed me to do some navigational work for satellites. That is, pointing satellites, aiming, moving satellites. It was just the beginning of the era. Remember, Russia had their first satellite, Sputnik, in 1957.
And then 1961, Gagarin.
And the U.S. rushed to try to catch up. And I was part of that group of people. It was fascinating. So I did navigation on this project, and then I went to Rand Corporation in California, which had the contract to create the navigation for Gemini, which was the two-man satellite. And that navigation was used for Apollo to go to the moon, because you have to develop it ahead of time. You can't just send the people out with no way to get there. And it was just great as a young person to be there when they launched satellites and when they sent up Apollo. It was like being at the top of the world.
But you were at the top of the world. I mean, what kind of feeling did you have?
Oh, it was just very exciting. I was there when they aborted a launch because in the old days we had these card readers, big card readers, and they used to vibrate, and somebody put a Coca-Cola on the top, and it vibrated off and fell into the machine. And it caused everything to stop. So we aborted a launch because somebody put their soda on top of the card reader.
The next question, from being a scientist, actually rocket scientist, how did you become a trader?
Oh, well, I had a partner, a very good friend in this work that I was doing in aerospace, and we decided that we'd form our own computer company. He would sell and I would write programs. And we did that. And we started doing medical reimbursement. Had I stayed in that field, I would be really wealthy now, but I didn't. Somebody came along with a problem in options, London options, and they needed somebody with computers and with mathematics, and they couldn't find anybody till they came to us, and we said, oh sure, we'll try that. And we did, and we had some success, and from there somebody else came to us, and we just never left. We just never stopped. Once you learn about the markets, it's just very difficult to leave. It's like the great entrepreneurial world
Why?
You
It's
don't.
more of an addiction, or
It is. You realize that your opportunity is limitless in it, and it's fun. You know, if you're a puzzle solver, if, you know, we were talking about how do you qualify people. I think when IBM originally was looking for programmers, nobody knew what a programmer was in the 1950s and 1960s. So they advertised for people that did crossword puzzles, were chess players, and bridge players. So game players were their idea of the best qualified people to do these things. And I think that's probably still true of traders, that you need to be a game player to be successful.
what was the first year when you built your first system, and what was the system based on?
Oh, well, it was a trend following system, and the reason is in aerospace we used exponential smoothing to track. Well, no, it's not really moving average. It's a smoothing, similar to a moving average, but and we used it to track the flight of a missile. The trajectory of a missile. And while we were sitting around doing nothing at some point, we did that with the prices in the stock market. And so you had a lot of people in aerospace trading their own stocks using these smoothings. And in the 1960s and the 1970s, it was so easy. I mean, the markets trended, there was less participation. When they started up, they continued up. That's why things like originally 10-day moving averages, which was Donchin's first system, was so successful. 10-day moving average. You couldn't possibly make money with that now. But anyway, that was the start of it. So we used trends, and we used them because that's what we knew. And all the other things, like as you got into agriculture, you start applying them to spreads and other similar things, but it seemed it worked, and I guess everybody stayed with it.
Once you start making money on your opinion on the playing system, I mean, what did you feel? I'm not talking about just, let's say, is a dollar amount, but for example, when you have your skills and you're applying your skills to the field where you actually never been before, I mean, how to parallel that kind of feelings?
Well, we had a difficult time early on because we were doing very well, and we created some small funds of commodities, because when I started there were no interest rate markets. Even gold wasn't trading, and so it was all wheat and corn and cattle, and we applied, and sugar and things like that. We applied that type of system. We gotten a little more sophisticated, but not much, and we made portfolios, and then we marketed them as funds in 1973. Well, it was a fund. It was a fund, but it was highly regulated in California. You could get people to put in $50,000 once. You couldn't solicit more than once. And you started it out. And we hit 1973 was the Russian wheat deal with the US. Russia was in need of grain, and we sold them ours, and then we had a terrible crop. And so the price of wheat tripled, and everybody made a ton of money. It was just being at the right place
at the right time.
Yes. And oddly enough, most of the people, I mean, they must have made 500% or 1,000%, and they said, you can't possibly do better than this. We're taking our money out. So we wound up with very few people, and we wound up switching our orientation, starting another fund, getting other people interested, and broadening out the nature of the business.
How did you execute back then?
Oh, you called up, we generated computer signals, and we had large computers then. There weren't any such thing as laptops or even minis. We had large computers, and we called up the broker and placed the orders, and we paid $50 per side, or I'm sorry, $50 round turn commission to trade. $50. So you couldn't trade too fast.
Oh, obviously.
It was really
Experience.
but we were so highly leveraged that we could absorb the $50. I mean, now we pay $3. It's a whole different market. But anyway, that was fun. It was fun talking to the brokers. The brokers became our friends. I guess especially
And
because
I'm sure after that, when the brokers see that the whatever trader, investor, client made a lot of money, that investor probably starts calling you and
oh
says,
yes,
Perry,
yes, here's some more people that would like to use your system. It was easy to raise money, but the markets were easier. Now it's a much more challenging problem.
Yeah, we'll come after that to whatever the people doing right now. Before or right now, usually, what part of technical analysis is in your systems? 30%, 50%, 70%, 100%?
My stuff is 100%.
Technical.
Yeah, it's all algorithmic. It's fully automatic. I have lots of different approaches that I use, short-term, long-term, but everything is automated because that's my background, and I feel more comfortable with that.
But technical analysis, like for example, when you're building a system, a lot of people, besides technical analysis, they put something else. Yeah.
They do. They may put a fundamental overview on things, which I don't object to. I just can't do that. If I'm short-term trading, I might use a longer-term average to see what the overall direction is, or like some friends of mine will use, what they call their triple screen approach. Elder does that, but he was by far not the first one, although he does like to take credit for it.
I understand. No, he just, as you can see right there in your book, he talked about you. Right here.
Yes.
He said that you were, I'll translate for you. He said that you were pretty much the only one guy who over the years, it's going to be one of my questions, over the years stay with the progress, because a lot of people who were fine back 50 years ago, they're completely different right now. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to stay with the progress after 50 years or 60 years of progress.
Yes, but like everybody, you have to evolve because the markets are different, the data's different, the people are different. As I said, it's more competitive and it's more difficult.
What was the most profitable system of yours, and why do you think it worked out? It will take away a question with the market condition, because when the market condition helped, for example, I'll tell you a little bit of my story. I made a lot of money in 2000, 2001, 2002. Everybody said it was easy in 2000, 2001. The part is, I never trade NASDAQ. I never trade any single share of the internet, like a Yahoo or anything else. I made my money in a totally different way. So that's what I'm saying. It will take apart a good market condition. What was your most profitable system, and why you think it was?
Well, there were two really. One in the 1980s when I headed the development for an oil company, and we had unlimited amounts of money, and we traded
for trading or for
trading.
For trading.
Yes, oil in the 1980s, oil. These companies had the money was no object approach to things. And I was with an oil company that is not so well known, but was very wealthy, privately held, called Trans World Oil, and we traded the biggest book in the world. And we. How
much money, if it's okay to say?
Well, in the early '80s, it was $10 billion.
Wow.
And that was real money in the '80s.
It's a real money right now. I mean,
Yes, it's now you have to have $1 billion under management to be a credible advisor,
right.
CTA. But back then you could have 10 million and be big time.
So you would trade the book over $10 billion.
Yes.
How many of you were there?
Oh, it was maybe 15 of us.
Yeah, but for that kind of book, it's not that much money.
But it was automated. Well, we only traded a couple of different methods, and they were automated. And it was mostly for, execution. We had 5 technical people and 7 people executing or something.
Developers.
Yeah, it's the way. That's all we needed.
So what was the system based on?
Oh, that was all trend following. The 80s was still very successful trend following, and we also had one shorter term, 3 to 5 day system that we traded in. Yeah, I like that. I always like that time frame.
That's why you asked at the beginning of the conversation. Me too, because first 3-5 days you have an impulse in the market.
Yes.
But at least it shows you
Yes.
the power of where it's coming from.
Yes, you can make enough money in that, and you're not fighting costs and other things. And I still have quite a few short-term systems that have that same time frame. Anyway, so that was one of the systems. The other one was the one I mentioned where I had a company in the 1990s, and we did intraday breakout. That was, like opening range breakout. That was so popular then. And in retrospect, it worked because it was a gigantic rally in the market. And we benefited from trading the right things at the right time. And I had mentioned when we talked earlier that in 8 years we had a 3.0 Sharpe ratio in real trading, and we sold the company to ED&F Man in 1998, and after that the market just stalled out.
And the system just broke.
So timing is everything. No, it didn't fail, but it just went sideways after that. A couple of the sectors did okay, and the other sectors didn't, and they offset each other. And I've looked at it since then, and it's never really recovered from it. So
the first system that you built in 1980, where you run a portfolio of $10 billion, percentage-wise, how many percentage you were making a year?
I'd say it's tough because it varies. Making money in futures is not as consistent as other things. I'd say we averaged about 25%. Yes. Some years 5, some years 40. So it was, but we leveraged quite a bit. We leveraged more because we're commercial, and commercials get favorable margin even if they're not doing commercial stuff.
You know the story about the long-term capital management.
Of course. Well, that's a different problem.
I know, so I just want to know your personal opinion, like a person on the inside.
Well, I think the lesson to be learned from long-term capital and other things is you can't eliminate risk. You can push it down. You can push it down. It's going to pop up somewhere else. You can make believe you eliminate, and just because you haven't had it for some period doesn't mean it's not going to pop up and be just as bad as it was. And it is. It's like a short options profile.
One day you can get killed.
Yeah, you make money, a lot of little profits, and you get very complacent, and then all of a sudden,
boom.
Yeah, and long-term capital apparently did something that was scientifically horrible. They made the decision that certain events that caused problems in the past would not happen again. And of course they're right.
Yeah.
But a new event will. And they took that data out so that they could show their risk was so small they could leverage it 50 times. But it's some risk is going to come up someplace. And that's the whole issue of survival in trading, is to understand that at some point you're going to have some horrible risk, and you better be prepared to either defend it or hedge it or do something so that you can survive it and move on to make profits again. So I think that's the fault of most beginning and even intermediate developers. They don't assess the risk of their systems correctly. They're too optimistic.
Oh, absolutely. That's the biggest problem with a lot of people.
Yeah. So I would rather make less money. I I mean, it has to be an adequate amount for the risk, but less money and be prepared for bigger risk.
Usually, if one want to build an algorithmic system, what they should begin with? What, let's say, you usually begin, because I'm sure you have a lot of different systems over the years. You know, for example, the trend following stopped working, you work counter trend or something else. So, let's say, when you build, what are you usually looking for?
Well, I mean, I recommend that people that start with trend following. They start with long-term trend following. Long-term trend following has an underlying premise that's fundamentally correct, and it's driven by interest rate policy. So that the central banks all seem to get together these days and follow much the same process, but they lower rates to stimulate the economy, and they do it in an orderly, slow fashion. They raise rates to dampen inflation in an orderly way, and these create trends in interest rates. And those trends in interest rates create trends in FX, but they're all long-term. And so you start with that, and I'd say 70-75% of the big fund managers have long-term trend following as the basis of their performance, and then they add other shorter-term systems to give them some distinction.
Flexibility and everything else.
Well, they want to look different from other companies, so they add some other systems that make their performance different. But under that, they all have trend following.
Your 3 to 5 days system, what they are based on?
Well, the one that I like the most, that I use the most, is just a pattern system, and it's based on the old idea.
That was the next question.
Right.
So we'll start
it's based on the old idea of the market goes down 3 days in a row. It's very likely to rebound, and you can do that but you need to use a noisy market. So individual stocks don't work.
By they mean noisy, it means the market is in a range. It's not breaking high or breaking low.
No, some markets, like index markets, are always noisy. So interest rate markets, like the short-term ones, like short sterling or euro dollars, are not noisy. They're very trending. So you need to start with a market that is noisy, and the index markets are generally the ones. And they are in a sideways range, they're even noisier. But even in a trending range, they don't go up more than a couple of days in a row before they turn around.
Lately, it's not that many.
So, well, it may be 80% reliable, but it's, for example, in the S&P, it'll only make 6% a year. Now, that's not enough. So what you do is you find other index markets and some other markets, even long-term bonds and the euro currency work for things like this, and you monitor this program for whatever market, 6 or 8 or 10 markets that work, and then whichever one gives you a signal, you take. And you only take one signal in one market. So what you're adding is more signals, one at a time, and by doing that, you can now change that 6% to 15 or 16%, which is good enough for me.
It's fantastic. No, it's fantastic for everybody these days.
Yeah, so here you have a system that may take maybe $20,000 to trade one futures contract, one at a time. Whichever signal you get, you take,
right,
and you get a pretty decent return. So and reasonably low risk. So anyway, that's the type of short-term system. So I would wait, say 3 days to get in, it does something, and then I take 2 days to get out, and I use profit taking or I exit after 2 days.
Profit taking, what do you mean by that?
Well,
Based on the risk you take, your profit
no,
taking?
price volatility.
Okay.
Yeah, always on price volatility. And as a default, I always use 20 days. I use the same as options. It's It's historic volatility, classic measurement.
You consider as ATR, average true range?
Yes, absolutely.
It's my favorite.
It works.
Of course,
You know,
it's not about that. For me in trading, something that can be explained, it works. For example, the average true range, you can see if there's 80% of the bar with the same size,
yeah.
at least it's something you can rely on.
Now I've tried implied volatility. Doesn't work at all.
Neither do I. I don't like it.
It's just it's a psychological reaction to the market, and it just has no predictability in it. So that's it. I had something else to say about volatility, but it'll come back to me.
Did you ever trade just by hands, or like it's always algo?
Well, I do all of the programs that I manage are fully algorithmic, but myself I get a little bored. And so I always have a long stock portfolio. And during
You mean buy and hold?
no, it's a trend following,
No, what do you mean long stock portfolio?
but I only take the long side of stocks.
I understand.
So I'm trend following, or I use divergence, or a couple of other things, but I'm only long. And I always have these stocks on. And during earning seasons, I often get big jumps in, they open with big gaps, maybe 5%, sometimes even 10%. And usually because I'm a trend follower in that, the gaps are usually in my favor.
Your favors.
It turns out people should learn that stocks that are going up tend to continue to go up, and the announcements tend to be surprises on the upside. So, but when I get this jump of 5%, I can't help myself. I get out of the stock, and I wait for a pullback during the day. But I'm always back in by the end of the day.
So basically, at the gap you can get out, and once the stock pull back, which is
I get
normal
back.
because people taking the profit, but at the end of the day you're still going to get in if nothing grows.
I can save about 40% of the gap.
Uh-huh.
So, if you have a $5 gap, I'm going to get back in $2.
Right.
And I've looked at that recently because I made a horrible mistake the other day when Northrop opened up 10%. I got out and it went straight up 20%. Right. And I said,
No, but if it's the only happens a few times, it's okay.
I know, but I was really annoyed. So I didn't do it the next 2 times, and I was so wrong that I did a study over the weekend on these gap openings and pullbacks, and it was consistent, over a large number of stocks, that when you get gap openings of whatever percentage, it will pull back about 40%.
Right.
And then these days it will close back near the highs for the most part.
It's a number game.
It is.
That's what it is.
It's statistics and
Nothing else.
And so now
That's
I feel
what I
more
was saying.
comfortable. I went back to doing that last week and I was fine.
Everything's great. Absolutely.
But it's a process, and every once in a while you have to check yourself, to make sure you're really doing it right.
How much you love this?
Well, obviously you can tell that it's a game, but it has a nice payout. My wife has the money.
It doesn't matter.
She's a floor trader.
Oh, your wife? That's going to be after that. I'm gonna make an oath for myself about your wife. So we'll talk about that later.
It makes a more interesting combination.
So, but I'm sure that's inside of you. As far as I understand,
Oh, yes.
Weekends, it's your life.
It's fun to create something that works, and it's a game. It's just a nice game for me, and after you've done it for so long, you get good at it.
Besides trading, developing the algorithm strategies, working with others, create the signals and everything else. What else excites you? What's your hobby?
Oh, well, I have a background in astrophysics, so I've been reading and looking at Neil deGrasse Tyson's books. Have you ever seen those? He's the head of the Hayden Planetarium in New York.
Very nice.
And he writes books like
About astronomy.
but he writes them for the layman. And you know, you get out of touch with black holes and what the latest thing is. Not that it can ever change my life, but he talks about what's in outer space. Originally we thought it was all empty and this and that, and it's filled with stuff other than space junk that we're putting up there.
This is the hobby.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I also play tennis and I do, you know, but intellectually I like to follow these things in astronomy because I did work in them, and I still get excited about the space program and these things that they sent out 20 years ago, these satellites that are now orbiting Jupiter and places. I just find that remarkable, given the technology, just a remarkable engineering feat.
Right.
So I don't think people realize. When they put the man on the moon, I had the hardest time because the chances of that person not coming back were so high. I was a nervous wreck.
I want to ask you a question. It's a funny question, but at least, you know, I'm going to hear it from you. There's a lot of articles, and you know, I'm sure, about the Apollo and everything else, that this was created in Hollywood. That this is, nobody ever flew to the moon. You understand that the Armstrong was not there. It was created in Hollywood. Because you know, when you have sometimes an opinion from people who really understand it, they said that virtually it's not possible, technically it's not possible. I want to hear it from you.
Oh yes, it's obviously I was watching while it happened. I don't think they panned over to a Hollywood set. You know, it was technically such a complicated thing because you orbit the Earth and then you have to reach escape velocity at just the right time to make this big arc so that you reach the moon at exactly the same thing so you could orbit the moon. But if you land on the moon and you break one of the struts, you might never be able to get off. You know, and these astronauts would have gone anyway. It's just, they knew the risk. And back then, we used to send them up with 2 small computers, which we had to load with cards before they went.
No, this had the small little cards.
Yes.
The first idea.
And they had tools to fix the computer if something happened. I mean, like screwdrivers and
And a hammer.
yes, especially a hammer. It was just remarkable what these people would do, and the navigation. You have no idea because you have these iPhones now. We did the navigation in 4K in a 4K computer. Yes, 4,000 words. Now you have, 200 gigabytes.
Right.
You don't know people don't actually know what 4,000 words are. It's just, and you did it in machine code, and it was just remarkable.
Besides 3 plus 2 pattern, which is common, like 3 days down,
Yeah.
2 days up. What's the next one? The favorite ones?
What is the next favorite one? Well, I have all sorts of variations on that same one,
You mean with the add-ons?
with the ups and downs. I have to think a second because that's really the one I use the most for the stuff.
Like in 2000, let's say we'll take 2008, right? Where the year basically was one of my favorite year. I made the most money because I love to short. 80% of my trades are short. I understand panic.
That's my wife is
Yeah,
too.
perfect.
She's a floor trader. She's
Yeah,
short.
That's what I'm saying. The wife is a separate equation because it's a big deal. So you see,
Yes.
put it
Most of the days I'm long, she's short. We offset each other. We make no money.
you put
It's much the same thing.
So
yes.
let's say in 2008, what worked out for you?
In 2008, arbitrage was the best. If you were hedged, naturally hedged in the market because you were long short, you offset most things. And I do like arbitrage, but I'm much more realistic about the risks
Right, of course.
of them. I like pairs trading, for example. And I'll make a portfolio of pairs trading.
When you're talking about the pair trading, you're talking about the same stocks in the same industry,
Yes,
or
yes.
just purely?
Except I'll do it in futures also. I'll do it with U.S. interest rates versus European interest rates. I'll do it in the energy market. In related stuff, it's much more profitable in futures because you have much more leverage. Yeah, you have to look for a.
Alpha.
I mean, you have to look for things that work, and there are different ways. There are some very sophisticated mathematical ways to judge whether these two items are candidates for this arbitrage. I don't think that's necessary at all. I think you logically pick some things, you see if it works. If it works, they're candidates. You know, it's whether it works or not that's the ultimate test for this, not whether or not they mathematically cross each other enough times. You know, co-integration.
Because a lot of times, a few friends of mine, they built the system. They live in Israel. They said big hello to you, by the way. They build in a system where they have a physics rules. For example, if there's one pair 10 days going up, it's going to continue to go up. That's what they try to figure it out. You know, the rules of physics.
Well, some markets, like the VIX, are more likely to continue than reverse. So in case of the VIX, you have what we used to call a high momentum system. When it becomes strong, it continues that for a few days.
Right.
And you can capture that. So in that sense, I do trade that, and it's almost the opposite of the 3-day pattern that we were talking about. So when it moves 2-3 days, I go in the direction that it's going rather than assume it's going to reverse. And of course, the VIX is heavily biased towards selling.
Correct.
So
Big time.
yes.
A few days, last week, when the market went down, the VIX went up almost 40%. A few days.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
By the way, there is another system that I like, which tries to identify sharp bottoms in the market, like blow-off bottoms, with a combination of trend and high volume and oversold, and it tends to be highly reliable. And I think I wrote about it in some magazine.
But you were saying oversold. You were talking about the indicators, which shows.
Well, the price would be oversold using like a stochastic or something like that. And I think I wrote about it, and it's one of the few things that actually uses volume, because very few systems use volume.
You know what I use, so I need your opinion on it as well. I always say to the people that I teach that most of the moves, they begin and end with a false breakout.
It could.
You just told me in the beginning of the conversation that you're paying a lot of attention right now to the false.
In high frequency trading, you know, you have a real tight range for a while, and then you get a little blip up, and that's like somebody buying to test the market and then blunk.
I always, you know, there's a next time when we're going to have a professional conversation, not on camera, about my system, I'll show you there's a few little hints that I identify if it's going to continue to go, or it's going to be a false breakout. I'll show you like that.
Well, that would be interesting because it's clearly an important, you know, decision process.
Yeah, you have to figure out how we get into the range, how fast we go, what's the ATR, I mean, what's the bars and everything else. So the next question is, you are you said before, you are the index developer. How did you develop the index? What it takes you? What did you put into it? What proportion and all the details?
I'm not sure that was clear. You were saying an index. I've done.
Maybe it's like an index fund or something. Because it's in your Wikipedia, it says index developer. If it's another question, we can skip.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I did show recently that if you wanted to trade an ETF, like a sector ETF, if you took the 10 largest stocks, you would do much better
Of course.
than
ETF itself.
yeah, because as with portfolios which could be over diversified, I believe portfolios should not be over
But
diversified.
I always, if you would see my classes, I always mention your numbers and everything, and I always say one thing: you saying the over diversification is the mother of enemies. That's what I always say the same. When it's not too much.
It's, think about it. Think about portfolio construction. Most of the CTAs that have lots of money try to diversify into as many things as possible. When you do that, you start to introduce marginal profits and marginal returns and more risk. When I started doing stocks about 15 years ago, I moved from futures to start applying stocks. It was a real interesting problem because now I have 2,000, 4,000 stocks, and I only have enough money to trade 10 or 20 or 30 with a big enough position for whatever. And so now you have to figure out, how do you pick out of 4,000 stocks which ones you want to trade? And so the way you do it is on how the stock performs on your system. The ones that perform the best are the candidates.
When you're saying the one of the perform the best, you're talking about from a history.
Yes, historic profits only. If you start saying profits plus risk plus the number of trades, the more qualifications you put on it, the less chance you have of it working. Turns out that profits alone are just fine.
So basically you're just saying that in the last 5 years the stock give the most money, that's the one I'm going to trade.
Right, but my time frame's shorter than that. I'll use 3 months and 1 year.
So basically you don't go too far into the history.
Because
market is changing. Here I agree with you 100%.
Yes.
You shouldn't go that deep.
Stocks that used to go sideways all of a sudden start to move because of something, and you want to participate in them. So you do that, and then you rank them. You pick off the 10 or 20 best ones that you want, and when they fall out of that ranking, you replace them with something else. Now, I then went back and I did that in futures, and because we used to have well-diversified portfolios. And the fact is, if you can just eliminate from your portfolio a few futures markets that don't work well, your performance goes up tremendously.
Much better, absolutely.
So all you have to do is concentrate on looking and saying which one of these things I'm trading is not doing well.
Of course, sometimes when you're well diversified, this pure stocks or futures, they bring your performance down big time.
Yeah, so my concern is, why do these people think they have to invest all of their money
all over
if they're investing in something that is not giving them the right return? It's better to put that extra money in interest rates and have a higher performance on the money you have invested.
Some of the people, they basically care a lot about the drawdowns, and they're saying diversifications smoothen the drawdowns. Not always.
Yes, but adding a 64th item to your portfolio in these big funds makes no difference whatsoever. And they'll find that the benefit of trading less but trading better, and not hard just to eliminate, just if you have 60 markets, you must be able to eliminate 5 of them. You eliminate 5 markets that are performing badly, your returns are better. So I'd rather trade 20 good markets than 60 mediocre ones.
Дорогие друзья, специально от нас вам и от Перри будет разыграна вот эта книжка. На самом деле это только недавно вышло, видите, с подписью. Мы специально взяли для вас. Видите, Перри Кауфман один из лучших специалистов по трейдингу в мире. Больше 30 лет трейдеры разного уровня до начинающих ветеранов обращаются к его книге «Системы и методы биржевой торговли» в поисках самых актуальных и проверенных систем трейдинга. Дальше Александр Элдер написал: эта энциклопедическая книга по биржевой игре заслуживает внимания каждого серьезного трейдера. Я знаком с Перри более 20 лет, но он не перестает удивлять меня свежестью своих наработок. Дорогие друзья, это человек 73 года, и ему 73 года, и он в теме. Поверьте мне, крайне редко увидишь такого мастодонта, который действительно технологически продвинутый человек. Для того, чтобы вам выиграть эту книгу с этой подписью, вам понадобится сделать всего 3 простые вещи. Первое – это подписаться на наш YouTube канал. Все, что вам нужно сделать, это нажать кнопочку «Где» с колокольчиком. Второе, очень важно, это поделиться нашим видео в социальных сетях, нашим видео, которое вы только что видели. И третье, предельно просто, мы хотим знать ваши комментарии, что вам понравилось в этом интервью, и не просто понравилось, а что вы, как трейдер, вынесли для себя из этого интервью. Всего 3 простых условия, и это великолепная книга. Ценность этой книги в подписи, она ваша. Мы первые русскоязычные, кому Перри Кауфман дал интервью. Дорогие друзья, это не просто так. Перри посмотрел наше видео, мои обучающие видео, и сказал: да, этому человеку я с удовольствием дам интервью. И, как я уже сказал, мне было очень приятно, что вопросы, которые я задавал, были связаны непосредственно с трейдингом, а не личностный рост, как стать или еще кем-то. Поэтому, дорогие друзья, участвуйте, выигрывайте, подписывайтесь, шерайте, хэштегайте и все остальное. И этот замечательный экземпляр может быть ваш.
So let's talk about your wife.
Okay. She was on the floor of the CME for 25 years.
How long you married?
We're only married 20 years, but we met and we've known each other professionally since 1971. So
The year I was born.
So, yes, it took us a while to get to. We had to go through a few other relationships, and we finally found that we had a lot in common.
Obviously, so she started as a floor trader.
Yes, yes.
And the Chicago board, what did she
She
trade?
started when gold came. She was there a little before when gold started to be listed. She started trading currencies, and then eventually the S&P and things
So
like
she worked
that.
for the company as a floor trader.
No, she was a member.
She was a member.
Yes, and then and then she went off the floor in the 90s, and she. Did you hear of the ISE, the International Securities Exchange? They were the first automated options exchange.
90s.
Yes, they came in the late 90s. They went public shortly after.
I see.
ISE, not ICE. Not ICE, yeah. And she became a managing director of, or not a managing director, but a director, head of compensation, head of a number of things there. And she took it all the way from when it went public to when it was sold to the Deutsche Börse 10 years later and went private. It was a Harvard Business School classic example of what to do with a company, from founding it to going public to building it to selling it.
How basically, it's very hard sometimes when a husband and wife, two professionals, by the different sides of the game. So, you know, how you get it alone?
She's a better business person. And she's a good trader, but she's only short. As a floor trader, she can't stand going long. She loves going short.
So
she thinks the market's going to crash any moment.
No, but it's good if she makes money, so she's right.
She knows how to manage risk,
The most important thing.
which is, you know, you survive as a floor trader, you have to manage risk. But she is a much better business person than I am. I'm more involved with the strategies, and you know, I like opportunities, but she will sort through them and say, I like, you
Very
know,
important.
she
trades right now?
yes, she and our daughter have a trading room set up in the house in Chicago.
Fantastic. So as far as I understand, you live 6 months a year in Chicago and 6 months in Bahamas.
3 in Chicago and 9 in the Bahamas.
Bahamas. Why Bahamas? I love Bahamas.
Well, we used to live in Bermuda. When that's where the oil company was I was with in the 80s and 90s. And then I left and we retired to Vermont. And that was nice. but looking for signs of intelligent life became difficult.
So your daughter is trader as well?
Our daughter is a trader.
Herself?
She just trades. She trades money that was financed by us.
That doesn't matter.
like any responsible child.
She's doing good?
She's not losing money. She's still at early stages.
How old is she? If you don't mind.
52. But she tried other things. She had a trucking company. And she finally decided that every business has its problems, and that she enjoyed trading when she was younger, and her mother spent some time working with her, and now they spend time together. Like these 3 months they'll work together in this office, and then she'll be more or less on her own, except I guess her mother and she, even when we're in the Bahamas, spend a lot of time on the telephone. So
You wrote a lot of books.
so it seems.
No, you wrote
Yes,
a
I
lot
have.
of books. The question is, do you have your favorite ones out of all of them, and why?
My favorite one is the next one. I wrote this little book and published this little book called A Guide to Developing a Trading System recently, and it's short, and I did it from the questions that people ask me when I gave lectures, seminars,
Right.
because I said, this is what people really want to know.
So you put it in that book.
So I kept track of them, and I wrote them up, and I put them in some coherent way. And in some ways it was sharing the best knowledge that I have. So I published that, and I was all done. And then I sat down and said, God, this is missing a lot of stuff.
So
And-
it's going to be a next edition.
And so it was, the first book was a small format, 175 pages. I've rewritten it. It's now a large format, 600 pages. And it's all ready to go, but the publisher doesn't want to publish it too soon after the first one.
Oh, it's got to be
And because of that, as time goes on, I'm adding a little this and a little that. But I really believe what I'm trying to do is show people how to develop a trading system and what the important parts are and where the problems are that they're going to
right.
have, and give them lots of, the new one has lots of examples of how to do it and the kind of problems and what works, and
Practice.
and a lot of charts and
Oh, I love it.
things like that.
For me, I'm a more visual guy. You
Yeah.
know, when I understand and absorb the material when I see it. You know, when I see charts and explanation, for me it's much easier to absorb.
Yeah. Anyway, it's one of these things where you go back and you reflect on what you've done, and you said, I could have done better on this. But this book, of course, has helped my career a lot. When I first started it and published the first one in 1978, I had to write all the material myself because there wasn't any material out there.
Right.
And I did it because I felt that the futures industry was greatly misunderstood. And they thought it was all these wheeler dealers and people taking advantage of things, and in some ways it was. But there was still an underlying group of people that were really trying to understand the market. And so I did a lot of the work myself and published it. And since then I could draw on other material, but I keep putting more and more new stuff in it.
So this is you always have a core and you just add to the core.
Yes. Well, as I said, the real problem for the next edition is going to be, what do I remove? Because I don't want it to be...
Filter it out.
Yeah, I'd like it to be a little smaller. And I have to make this decision about what historic things should be in there that don't actually work, but offer a perspective. And I don't know.
And we'll go to the last question, the average day for Perry Kaufman.
Average day, I get up at 4:30 in the morning.
Why 4:30?
I deal with Asia and Europe. And I can still catch Asia while at the end of the day and chat. I don't need to every day. More often I speak to a company I work with in Hamburg and a friend in Munich. And then I look at what I might do during the day, review things, and then I go from for a long walk. I mean, reasonably long walk. It's 3 miles, fairly fast. So, and sometimes I play tennis before the market opens.
That's an average day.
Yeah, and then I work till the market closes, and then we have cocktails on the patio.
Just enjoying yourself.
With friends. It's a long enough day, you know. And sometimes I work in the evening. If I'm writing a new book, I usually work at it 2 or 3 hours a day. Often it's in the morning. So, as you get older, you're more productive in the morning. So.
Great. It's been a real pleasure. You know, I asked all the questions I wanted to ask.
You know, Alex, it's been my pleasure. It's
I hope you know,
a privilege meeting you.
Interesting for you.
Yes, it is. Very interesting.
And as I said, once we're going to develop the system, I'm going to show you right away. So we'll see what we can do together.
And I'm happy to stay in touch and share some of my stuff with you.
I would love it. Anytime. And as I promised before, I want you to sign the book. And you know, the most important thing, this book is going to be for one of our audience, not for us.
Oh, I shouldn't say to Alex?
No. This is going to be too much for me, you understand? I want the people to enjoy it. And as I said before, next time I'm going to buy you a book in Russian and bring it to you.
I'd really appreciate that.
No,
or if you just tell me where to get it, I can.
No. We'll do it. We'll send it to you.
Do you need a date?
No. Yeah. Okay, you can put a date.
They did a wonderful job.
One of the best. I have 2 books, but the fun part about my books are funny. One it's called Trader Pinocchio.
Really? Yes.
Pinocchio, all the traders Pinocchio. And another one called Stock Exchange for Blondes. It's not books like that in the United States.
No.
You know, they're funny, but they're with a certain point, what needs to be done.
Funny, the problem is, and I once tried starting a funny book, but it doesn't translate across the world. Humor is difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
So I stopped. You know, my wife said, I don't know what your audience is for this book. That's the business aspect of her.
All right, Perry.
Alex, it's really been a pleasure.
Really pleasure. Только что у нас было интервью с, на мой взгляд, интереснейшим спикером. Это Перри Кауфман, человек, которого называют отец алгоритмического трейдинга вообще в мире. Это на самом деле очень интересный человек. Ну, вы представляете, сами по себе работать над проектом Apollo, видеть, как летит ракета на Луну, разговаривать и общаться с космонавтами, с великим Армстронгом. На самом деле это дорогого стоит. Один большой плюс, конечно, этого человека, что он сделал сам себя, сам учился. По-простому, он один из немногих, кто изобрел индустрию именно алгоритмического трейдинга в Америке, ну, естественно, в мире. Да, человек, который работал с первыми картриджами, компьютерами. Мои впечатления, не буду говорить абстрактными такими фразами, очень хорошие. Этот человек понимает, о чем он говорит. На самом деле он говорит очень простым языком. Я уверен, что он наверняка внутри знает гораздо больше и гораздо глубже, чем он говорит, но он работает с очень простыми вещами. На самом деле очень простые вещи, которые он говорит, они действительно работают. Он не лезет в высокочастотный трейдинг, он говорит, я не очень понимаю, но он работает с очень простыми вещами. Это тренд-следящие, контртрендовые стратегии, что мне очень приятно было, подтверждение моих слов, когда я учу своих студентов. Это ATR, Average True Range. Это когда инструмент падает, обязательно будет технический откат. Все эти вещи на самом деле на рынке работают, как он говорит, это так называемая инерция рынка. Колоссальный, конечно, плюс того, что этот человек живет этим, он любит. Я специально задал ему вопрос, это стандартный день для Перри Кауфмана, вы слышали, что он ответил. С утра работаю, днем работаю, вечером работаю, в перерывах, когда есть немножко времени, немножко играю в теннис или занимаюсь. Жена трейдер, дочка трейдер, на самом деле, ну, что еще можно сказать? Очень приятно брать интервью у таких людей, которые действительно профессионалы своего дело. Что мне еще очень понравилось, прямо после интервью, Перри, мы это не записывали, Перри сказал очень хорошую фразу, он говорит: ты знаешь, я давал огромное количество интервью, и ты один из немногих, кто действительно задавал вопросы и понимает в трейдинге те вопросы, которые он мне задавал. Мне было очень приятно, и, дорогие друзья, надеюсь, что вы для себя сможете обязательно что-то подчеркнуть в этом интервью. И впредь мы будем стараться именно приносить очень интересные интервью из профессионалов этой индустрии. Да, Перри — это такой мастодон. 73 человеку, 50 лет в индустрии, строят алгоритмические стратегии по сегодняшний день. Можете зайти в Википедию, почитать о нем. Он по сегодняшний день на борте большого количества компаний и очень активно занимается трейдингом. И самое интересное, как он сказал, сам любит поторговать руками. Смотрите нас в эфире. Это был 3-й выпуск программы «Посидим по-большому» с Александром Герчиком и выдающимся Перри Кауфманом.